it was part of who I am to go, and you see a problem, you kind of want to help it. The amount of companies that are actually backing up, truly testing the efficacy and the value of what those, in this case, the botanicals are, is so rare. It makes me want to freaking lose my mind. And so just across the board that people have compromised over and over and over again on money over the health and safety of people, and that is wrong. And it is not something that I can sit back and be okay with.
Hello and welcome to the BODi Experience. I'm Carl Daikeler, CEO of BODi, and this is where we talk about what it's like to overcome obstacles and achieve incredible lifestyle transformation through fitness, through nutrition, through mindset. But today we got a special guest. Now, last time I did the BODi Experience in front of this wall, we had my wife, Isabel Daikeler, who was the co-formulator of Shakeology, which was celebrating 15 years as the very first and original superfood shake. Well, as she mentioned in that podcast, she had a partner in that project, and the partner's with me today, Mr. Darin Olien.
Hey, man.
Welcome back.
Wow, it's good to be here.
It's good to have you in here. Last time you were in here, we were celebrating actually the launch of this space. Mm-hmm. But let's get right to it, because your contribution to so many people's lives is a really big deal. And it started with the introduction of a concept and introduction of two people. Obviously, Isabel and I were talking about what it might be like to create something that would help me solve my own problem. And that is, I eat like a second grader and I don't like vegetables. And how can I do a shot or something that'll maybe help me get some nutrition in my life? And she said, well, there's all these ingredients, all these things that we can put together, but I'm not a formulator and I've never done that kind of thing by myself, so I need a partner. And you guys were introduced by a guy, Miguel, that worked at a
vitamin barn.
Vitamin barn.
He's managing the vitamin barn in Malibu.
Yeah. And so tell me about that introduction and how it led to this miraculous source of nutrition for people.
Well, the interesting thing is, like, as you guys were discussing, I was in the field finding and looking and discovering some of these botanicals and already formulating, right? So therein lies this synchronicity, right? So I was actually working to steal Miguel from that job so that he could kind of global trot with me around the world to work on indigenous direct sourcing of incredible botanicals, because I wanted to do it because I was getting so interested in quality ingredients and their ability to support our health and our lives. And so in that process, Miguel knew what I was doing. And so when he met Isabel and they had a great relationship already. They had this discussion. She brought up this, I think you guys weren't even married at the time, right? And then all of a sudden he was like, "Oh my God, you need someone to help? Like, this guy's doing it. Darin's doing it." So, cut to, I think, a week later, you guys had just moved to Malibu, and I opened the door, and there was Isabel, and we just nonstop talked. Yeah. And it was very clear she was a sister of how she viewed health and nutrition. And it was like, wow, that alchemy was very obvious very quickly.
But let's talk about why we even needed it, or why what you would do is called the Superfood Hunter. Yeah. Why would that be meaningful? Because, today, there's other companies that saw the success of Shakeology, over 1 billion servings now. And you can look at labels and you can go, oh, look, it's got that, it's got that, it's got that. And so what is the difference? Why did we need a Superfood Hunter in order to make something that really makes, that you can feel the difference, that is this, has this much impact on the way you feel?
Well, it became very clearly and very obvious to me that why I decided to jump on planes and show up around the world on mountaintops in the Amazon, meet the farmers, spend hours and hours and hours just to understand the process of how this great botanical with a great story and sometimes thousands of years of use, how then that could get to someone consuming that. But why I was actually doing it is because the testing I was doing on supplements on shelves, they had a great story. It was the early version of kind of this eco washing, right? This idea that we tell a good story, but then have nothing really to base it on because the product is essentially neutered.
What do you mean by that? Neutered?
It doesn't have the constituents and the compounds that are, call it, in the wild, right? And how they were actually used. By the time they would, however they would grow it, however they would process it through all kinds of heats and extraction processes, the actual then compound wasn't the same.
Or you know what I call them? Those are Milli Vanilli formulas.
Yeah, exactly.
They look and sound like they might be great,
Totally.
but ultimately there's no substance in there.
Totally. So that was the early reason, even before I started formulating for Shakeology, why I was so adamant about going to far off places. It wasn't a sexy thing. It wasn't that I could easily afford it. It was just a necessary step. So in that process, and cut to that label thing, like along my nutrition life, right, of studying that and dedicating, there was this other side. It showed up in the nutrition space. It showed up in the personal care. I lost my father to a sensitivity to chemicals and then alcohol and everything else. So I wrote this other book and dedicated about 3 years of my life with 15 researchers looking at compounds and toxins that are in our environment, from everything from personal care to our home, to our building materials, to our devices we're using, to shampoos, conditioners. The start of that was because of what I was seeing in the nutrition space. Everyone says, Carl, like, read the label. Yeah, it's a good start. You should do that because most ultra processed food is full of created product that really isn't even food anymore. But there is a whole nother level that you cannot see, which is so gnarly that they allow, FDA allows, USDA allows, NIH allows, they allow for certain chemicals to be in product and you don't have to claim them. You don't have to show that they're there. So there's a lot of under the hood things that you wouldn't know about.
Yeah.
And so because of that, you have to test, you have to understand, you have to dig into that and test it yourself, which is why I've loved this whole path with BODi, because from the beginning, we backed it up with the quality control, quality standards, and tested all these things ourselves, right?
Yeah.
That is not a standard that is set in the industry. It's the Wild West. So what happens is if someone decides to copy us, which many have, I could go to 10 manufacturers and say, find me Camu, find me Acerola, find me Ashwagandha, find me Cordyceps, find me Chaga. I can have them find me that stuff, put out a generic, certificate of analysis that says that's what it is, but you don't know the process, you don't know the other chemicals, you don't know anything of the other exposures that you may be exposed to.
Yeah.
And also you have no idea the quality. You have no idea the strength of those compounds. So the very fabric of me superfood hunting was to ensure that we had compounds that are flowing to the customer that was taking those so that they could exercise what they're here to do. And they're here to help us, right? They provide us antioxidants, provide us with prebiotics and fiber and compounds that help us have resiliency in our life and our health. But if we don't know what that is, the label doesn't say it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, not only am I not getting the nutritional value, I'm potentially being exposed to chemicals that no one told me about, and no one disclosed, and that are then harmful to me. So the very, the frustrating thing, Carl, in the supplement world is that today, after all these years, it still exists, where companies are not backing up what they're doing, what they're saying. They don't know the farmers. They don't know where this stuff is coming from. They haven't spent time in the fields. They don't know what the soil is. Hell, we did tests in far off places where we saw that literally in the middle of the Andes, we were getting readings of heavy metals. And we're like, how is that possible? But there is no way, no indicator that would tell us that there was heavy metals there unless we tested. Once we tested, we reverse engineered and found that in the Andes, there's 9,000 unregulated mining operations that are aerosolizing heavy metals from the industry. So our world is compromised.
Right.
We are running around with fatal conveniences. We think we're buying this shake to be healthy, this other shake. We think we're buying this other supplement. We think we're buying into this marketing idea, and then we don't have the assurance still to this day. And, your wife, me, if you guys weren't backing it up with our tests, we could have been doing all kinds of other things. We didn't have to stay here.
Well, people ask even, because they don't see you around, they don't know, and they're like, oh, is Darin still involved in Shakeology? Like what? So what is your involvement? How do you know that it is still the potent shake that you took so much TLC to create this masterpiece?
Yeah, we're still on R&D calls. We know, here's the thing, which is so wonderful. We've had relationships with the R&D people for so long. The ethos of the care has gone way beyond just Isabel and I. It has now been adopted by BODi, by the standards that have been set from day one. So when you set the standards, that's the team. And if the team doesn't follow those standards, they're not part of the team anymore.
Right.
So we have so much faith in that team, right? So when we have our bi-monthly meetings and we go over, okay, here's what's happening with this formula, here's the supply constraint on this one, what can we do here, here's the adjustments. I'm still excited about some of the stuff that's coming, right? We've been developing some stuff which we can't talk about yet, but it's really exciting. And when we get to innovate, we've been innovating literally the entire time. As we know more, as we find better botanicals, as we learn more about the process, as processes have changed to improve things. Also, what ingredients to stay away from that can't keep clean. So other people may be using certain ones that we haven't found. I remember early on we had grass juice powders.
Right.
So they were juiced powders in this concentrated form. Carl, when we went to the manufacturing facility, it was like Russian roulette. It was where everyone was getting the supply from. And it was just a matter of time because of the quality standards that were not set in place. It was just a matter of time before someone was going to get hurt. And so you're like, that wasn't a choice. It wasn't like we had to argue over that. Everyone knew, hey, this is what happened. This is what showed up. We can't use it. Yep. On one level, we would have loved to use the grass juice powders, but not if the supply was compromised. That's how involved it is, because we have a team that follows that strategy and cares as much as we do. And, we always weigh out options. So Isabel and I are still highly involved in the assessment and the evolution and the continued advancement of the shake.
You're obviously passionate about it, and you still drink the shake?
Every day.
Every day. So
I like mixing it into smoothie bowls. Like that's kind of like instead of blending, I like mix it into fruit, and like it's just I don't know. I've gotten just so hooked on doing it that way.
That's awesome. Well, how did you even get to this point? I mean, is this because normally formulators or people that we could put forward as an authority in this area would have a bunch of letters after their name and before their name, and would go from a fancy college and so on. But personally, I'll always go with somebody who is passionate about it and never stops that passion and learning more and understanding it and wanting it for themselves. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of that. Like I started with exercise, phys, and nutrition as a background, and it started the engine, right? Getting enough of physiology and nutrition to then have a foundation. In that foundation and in that pursuit, then like I said before, I started seeing the wobbling of the downside of the nutrition industry. So for me, I can ask questions, right? I ask questions. I'm willing to dig into that. So the questions I was asking is like, why is that quality not there? Why are there ingredients? Why is this not transparent? Why don't people know where these things are coming from? So what it would do, it would put me in countries. It would put me sometimes on a freaking water buffalo. And it would put me in long journeys to learn directly from the people growing it. And sometimes when you're in the middle of India and you're talking to a guy growing ashwagandha for 6 generations, there is nothing but knowledge coming from that conversation that you can't Google search, right? So I quickly got so obsessed. Carl, I was on the plane out of the country probably every 6 weeks for years.
Yeah.
I got so invested into understanding, because it becomes an anthropological, sociological kind of experience, as well as how are they literally taking care of the botanical.
Yeah.
Because when Isabel and I started this, by your flint of this idea, we very carefully said, well, what do people need? I'm just not geared that way to just, follow a job, right? I have to follow my passion. I have to look at it that way. And so when we asked ourselves, well, what are people missing? I let the question lead me. What are people requiring? So moving into that space of when I'm in India, and I'm in the Andes, I'm in their research facility, who've studied moringa, they've studied yacon. I mean, 2005, I was good friends with one of the top prebiotic researchers on the planet in the field, learning directly from him. For me, and I started 20 years ago, I started a PhD program in nutrition, and I was like, I'm learning infinitely more. Not to say there's nothing wrong with a PhD program, but I'm like, I have an accelerated program, and I'm so grateful to have that. And then you also understand yourself. I'm out of the box thinker.
Yeah.
And so if I'm in a situation, I'm getting all kinds of different ways of going about this. The fact that this all happened, right? The fact that you had this idea, Isabel and I were able to construct something that didn't exist based on answering these questions of what do people require. Yeah. We were filling a need of people are stressed out, their bodies are cortisoled, and they're not getting the nutrients. The soil is clearly not the same. the toxic food that they're being exposed to. All of these things we took to heart and said, well, how can we start filling those gaps? So for me, not only did I get to help formulate this thing, I got to learn a lot.
Dude, now when you're doing that, it all can't be, that's a winner, that's a winner. You must have had some weird brushes with stuff that you were trying or discovering. Well, yeah, any wild stories from out there that you prefer to not remember?
Dude, I mean, it's certainly on the botanical side.
Yeah.
There's like, sometimes it's just impossible to take this wild plant to make it viable, because it ferments very quickly, or it has so many antioxidants that once it's exposed to oxygen, they go away. So okay, the research shows that they're high antioxidants, but when you actually dry it carefully into a powder, it doesn't show up. There's many things like that, but I certainly have stories of
Eating ants and
yeah. I mean, I sometimes when I'm looking for one thing, I end up coming away with 5, 10, 15 other ones. But it's, I would always joke with the Shakeology quality control team, and I say, hey man, I found a great botanical. It's processed in this hut. No problem. And they would obviously laugh, and it's not far off of the truth, right?
in a bathtub.
I remember there's one ingredient that I really, 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 we were going for a coffee flavor.
Yeah.
So I had a perfect plan. There's a nut out of the Yucatan in Mexico. It's called the Maya nut. Very revered, multi-nutrient nut. So it was like perfect. When you perfectly roast this nut, not only does it keep its nutrients, it tastes like coffee.
Right.
So we have multiple meetings. We have a co-op of women doing the work, like super happy, and it supports these Maya nuts and keeps them and keeps the regenerative ag and not being deforested. And it was next to impossible to make sure that lined up. And the supply chain, it wasn't big enough. Right. And so we really tried, and I push. And then when you actually meet the team and they've gone through the numbers, it's like, okay, that will work for 10% of our formula.
Right.
So you got to let those things go. One thing I was super happy about, which we weren't able to get in right away, was Chaga mushrooms. And that took a while, but that was one of those, it's ready. We have the sustainable supply.
And what's Chaga supposed to do?
So Chaga mushroom is the king of all medicinal mushrooms, right? It's been from the Vikings to traditional Chinese medicine to the Ming Dynasty. It's a very powerful antioxidant. And a true adaptogen. So it's a modulation herb.
A lot of people don't know what adaptogen even means.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
So when we are stressed, when we are under a lot of cortisol and stress, we take these adaptogens, and those adaptogenic constituents help to modulate our stress, not force us. Now, it's different between an adaptogen can do no harm. So it's in a classification that it can't harm you. So you can take it and take it. Some herbs, Carl, you can't have in a shake because it's not safe to always take.
Right.
You have to stop. So adaptogenic herbs, they can do no harm, and they're always there to help modulate, as opposed to like an example of a caffeine. If you take coffee, that's going to stimulate your adrenals, and that's going to create this kind of false energy. That's not what an adaptogen is. That's going to help modulate your system. If your immune system is running high, it helps to pull it down. If your immune system is running low, it helps to pull it up. If your cortisols are high, it helps to pull them down. So that's the beautiful thing about this stress response that it has had in the environment.
Right.
And then when we take it, it helps us deal with those stress. And that world, those adaptogenic herbs, which we have many in the shake, was such a powerful input for the shake because we knew, even 15 years ago, we knew that the stress levels of our modern day world were at an all-time high.
So basically the way it's adapting to its environment, then when you ingest it, it's helping your natural systems adapt. Now, but you say that you're making some pretty strong statements here, and are these necessarily proven scientifically? Are these anecdotal, mythical, something proven over thousands of years? How do we know it does this?
Yeah, so all of these adaptogens have been classified under the Botanical encyclopedias. So yeah, these are highly studied, highly classified. Anyone right now, I love this exercise, and you can even use AI at this point. Type in chaga mushrooms. Type in the medicinal benefits. Type in the historic use. Type in all of that. Just one. You don't have to learn about everything in the shake.
Yeah.
But once you start to understand the depth and the breadth of the studies that have been done, it's astonishing. And listen, we put it in a safe dosage, right? So every person is different. So we put it at a level that's definitely going to support many bodies. And again, you always have to do your own testing if you want to have any medical changes in your life. But this is dealing with stress and your immune system.
How did this, I don't know, category that you created, superfood hunting, exploring the idea of discovering things in forests and on mountains, and how did that lead to the Netflix show? I don't know, maybe not everybody knows that you have this, like, wasn't that like a top rated show on Netflix?
Yeah, it was one of the top shows on Netflix, and it drew in more people to Netflix at that time than any other show ever.
What's it called?
Down to Earth with Zac Efron and myself.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about that is, traveling around the world to remote places, not at resorts, I got to see a lot of stuff. I spent a lot of time in India, a lot of time in Africa, a lot of time in Bali, a lot of time in South America. And you see where systems are breaking down in the world. Lack of water, lack of power, lack of food, and it was so astonishing to me. I got involved with clean water initiatives with Raincatcher back in the day. Mm-hmm. So it was part of who I am to go, and you see a problem, you kind of want to help it, right? You kind of want to support it. And I didn't know it unless I saw it, and I'm staring at it over and over and over and so on the one hand, the sexy superfood hunting just came by way of innocence. Mm-hmm. I just needed to know, right? But then the other benefits was I was seeing the breakdown of people not having kind of these sovereign principles that you would expect us all to have: water, power, food, shelter, freedom, all these things. Yeah. So all the while, for maybe 10 years, people said, you should have a superfood hunting show. Mm. And I'd be in and out of production meetings going, that's going to be a lot of work, and I don't think you all get it. So I just would back away. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, there's a show. But I started writing it from a bigger lens. Superfood hunting, if anyone saw the first season, the last episode, and really in Peru too, we talked about the last episode, I really was able to bring Zach into the jungle and show him some stuff, and Camus was featured and all this stuff. But that kind of on the back of a napkin of like, let's talk about health from a blue zone perspective, from longevity perspective. Let's talk about water. Let's talk about where foods come from. Let's talk about the lack of some of these things, and then great people doing great things to support that or change that. I had written that down. Yeah. Zach reached out to me from a random podcast that I was on, I don't know, 2016, 17. And we just developed a friendship. It was innocent. Yeah. And so then as we kind of had a friendship and he loved health and stuff, he said, "What else are you doing?" I said, "Well, I have this idea for the show." And then it was just like, he was so excited that, I don't know if it was filling a purpose for him at the time or whatever, but he called me 2 hours later and said, I already have a deal at Netflix. It's sitting there, but it's another show. It's called Spooning with Zach. Right? But it was really food, right?
Okay, right.
Right? I'm not spooning with Zach. So he talked to his whole team and said, I met this guy. They had no idea who I was, but I want to do this other show. Can we do it? And they're like, and of course I had to meet many of them. And he walked it into Netflix, and it did really well. And 70 million people, I think, saw it initially, and it continues to fuel me to this day.
It's awesome. You're a household name, man. So just bringing it back to the shake and maybe closing it out a little bit, you got a lot to be proud of. 15 years, the original superfood shake in concept, and certainly the only one that I'm aware of that has this purity of execution. And I think that's why it's achieved 1 billion servings, because people can feel the difference. Yeah. They might leave it for a little bit. Well, yeah, it doesn't feel the same. And they come back and they're like, oh yeah, that one's real. Yeah. What do you hope people know about this and get from the shake?
Yeah, man, this is something that I wish could be shouted from the rooftops, and that is going back to the care from every supplier, from every grower, from every test there, as well as all the testing here. The assurance that these compounds are safe and effective and in the product. That may not seem like a big deal, but that's a really big deal.
It's everything.
It's a really big deal. I mean, I've spent so much time looking at products, all kinds of products, from supplements, I still do, to personal care products, and the amount of companies that are actually backing up, truly testing the efficacy and the value of what those, in this case, the botanicals are, is so rare. It makes me want to freaking lose my mind. And so just across the board, that people have compromised over and over and over again on money over the health and safety of people, and that is wrong, and it is not something that I can sit back and be okay with, which is why I wrote this book, which is why I've been proud, which is why I consume this thing every day, because at least I can know that the things that I've been curating are safe and effective. Yeah. I mean, hell, from the clothing, people send me supplements every week. Nope. I can have one conversation with the developer, the CEO, and I know exactly, nope. So that, I don't think, humbly speaking, I'm grateful for the billions of servings. I am blown away at the success, but it pales in comparison of the people that actually still need it and need to know that BODi backs it up. And I will say that every day, all day, because like I said in the beginning, or maybe before we were filming, Isabel and I, we got plenty to do. We don't have to be here. Yeah. But because the ethos from you, from the beginning, when it was only us three believing that the shake probably was a good idea, it was us three. And then the business and the people you helped put around it, and then the people, getting back to what you're saying, the feeling, There is obviously a knowing. There's obviously an intuition. There's obviously all of that. But we are guaranteeing it's not having crap in it. Mm-hmm. And that is hitting your lips and hitting your digestion. And if that's not good and clean, you're going to feel it. So we don't have undisclosed crap in it, and we have validated, powerful compounds in it. So those are massive. So when you think that you're just taking any old shake, you're not.
Yeah.
And you have committed the millions and millions of dollars in order for us to always invest into that shake. And it's hard work to do it right. Mm-hmm. And it's easy for these people to skip the real work. Yeah. And I am grateful for you for not skipping the real work.
Well, I'm lucky to be surrounded by a team that gets it, because I don't get it. I just know that I want it. I would have never had the first thought of how to go about this, except I know I'm going to have to get health from somewhere, or I'm going to suffer. And so that's why I make this shake literally a daily morning ritual. I own my morning by having this thing. I put all the boosts in it. I add some peanut butter or almond butter, some coconut butter, and that's how I get my breakfast. And I'm so grateful for your discipline, your relationship with Isabel, to stay on top of this and to always care. And I think I speak for everybody who enjoys Shakeology every day and shares it with their family, that we're better for it. And keep up the great work. And if anybody wants to follow more of you, where would they find you?
Just DarinOlien.com.
Okay.
Got a bunch of stuff going on always.
Awesome. And read the book, Fatal Convenience.
Yeah.
All right.
It's the conveniences that we think are convenient, but in fact have a edge to them.
Okay, check that out. And of course, if you want me to keep in touch with you, you want to know what's going on in the world of BODi, you can text me, sign up for my little text service. That is 818-650-4369. If you want access to some workouts, we got 120 workouts that you can try for free. Sample them at BODi Previews. That's BODi Previews.com. And that's about $60 worth of content that you can have access to. Pick which program works for you and then sign up to do it. So our job here is to help you achieve your goals and lead a healthy, fulfilling life. And that's what the shake is for. That's what we surround ourselves with great people is for, and that's why we keep producing great stuff. So cheers, here's to you, 1 billion servings and 1 billion servings more. Thank you, my friend.
Man. Thank you.